Look closely at this marble portrait bust of the Roman Emperor Caracalla. Notice the severe military crop, the thick neck, and that deep-set pugnacious scowl. Every detail of his appearance, right down to the rough Gallic tunic he made fashionable, was highly curated to project sheer, intimidating physical power. Compare Caracalla's aggressive posturing to this marble bust of Alexander the Great. Caracalla was manically obsessed with the legendary conqueror. He wore blonde wigs to mimic him and even revived obsolete Macedonian phalanxes in his army, desperately trying to force a comparison. Beneath that tough guy facade was a deeply insecure air. When his father secured him a political marriage as a teenager, Caracalla despised his new bride. He began his rule by having his father-in-law executed on fabricated evidence, eventually exiling and killing his wife as well. His ambition extended to his own bloodline. When his father, Emperor Septimius Severus, fell severely ill during a military campaign in Britain, historical rumors swirled that Caracalla actively tried to persuade the doctors to speed up the old man's death. Caracalla's entire rule was a constant, violent performance. The scowls, the executions, and the military cosplay were the armor of a man who equated absolute control with his own survival. In February 211 AD, Emperor Severus finally died in his bed in York. With his last breaths, he gave his two sons and co-heirs a cynical piece of advice: agree with each other, make the soldiers rich, and ignore everyone else. Caracalla immediately violated the first instruction. He harbored an intense, lifelong hatred for his younger brother and co-emperor, Geta. You can see the scale of this paranoia in these ruins of the Palatine Hill in Rome. When the brothers returned from Britain, they divided the massive imperial palace right down the middle. They blocked the connecting corridors, built separate entrances, and surrounded themselves with heavily armed guards, turning a family home into a fortified domestic battlefield. A sustainable co-rule requires the ability to share. For an emperor whose ego demanded solitary glory, there was no room for a partner. By December 211, Caracalla decided to act. He asked their mother, Julia Domna, to arrange a private reconciliation meeting in her personal apartments, knowing Geta would arrive unarmed and without his bodyguard. It was a trap. The moment Geta entered, centurions loyal to Caracalla rushed into the room. Geta fled to his mother, but the soldiers struck him down right in her arms. Covered in her younger son's blood, Julia Domna was strictly forbidden by Caracalla from shedding a single tear. To legitimize his absolute control, Caracalla wielded the law to wipe out his brother's existence. Look at the Arch of Septimius Severus in the Roman Forum. Caracalla subjected Geta to damnatio memoriae. This was the systematic removal of a person's name and image from all state records. If you focus on the fourth line of the Latin inscription here, you can see the violent physical evidence of this policy. The stone is aggressively gouged and chiseled away right where Geta's name and honorific titles used to sit. Caracalla took the erasure far beyond stone monuments. He launched a lethal purge across Rome, executing an estimated 20,000 of Geta's political supporters, associates, and even the staff who favored him. The slaughter in the palace and the subsequent purge signaled a shift. The Roman state was becoming an autocracy, where the only path to stability was through the elimination of all rivals. Having alienated the Senate and horrified the public, Caracalla's survival relied entirely on his father's second piece of advice: bribing the military. He instantly raised the average legionary's pay by 50%. To fund this massive military payroll, he created this specific silver coin, the Antoninus. While it was officially valued at 2 denarii, the government debased the metal, putting only 1.5 denarii worth of actual silver inside it. In 1212, Caracalla expanded Roman citizenship to nearly every free person in the empire. While this appears to be an act of inclusion, the move instantly turned millions of provincial subjects into taxpayers, forcing them to bankroll his military expenditures. The wealth he didn't spend on the army went into architectural vanity projects designed to enforce his grandeur. You can see the results in these towering, massive brick and concrete ruins, the famous baths of Caracalla. By prioritizing military loyalty above all else, Caracalla turned the Roman government into a transactional system, a military protection racket funded by the rest of the empire. His violence soon bled across the borders. When Caracalla visited Alexandria, he discovered the citizens were openly mocking his claim that he murdered Geta in self-defense. In a rage, he ordered his troops to massacre a substantial portion of the city's population. By 216 AD, he marched east, determined to cement his Alexander the Great legacy. To gain territory without a real fight, he proposed a fake marriage pact to the king of the Parthian Empire. The Parthian king accepted the truce. Caracalla invited the king and his royal court to a celebratory feast. But as the guests relaxed, Caracalla ordered his troops to draw their weapons and slaughter the unarmed Parthians right at the dinner tables. The conqueror's persona had reached its limit. To maintain his authority, Caracalla now relied entirely on the tactics of the trap and the ambush. Caracalla's relentless need to perform as an untouchable tough guy proved to be a fatal flaw. He mercilessly mocked and alienated his staff, taking special pleasure in bullying his Praetorian prefect, Macrinus. Macrinus realized he was dealing with an erratic killer, and correctly guessed he would be next on the purge list. To survive, he decided to orchestrate an assassination before the emperor could strike. The death of Caracalla is a final historical irony. In the spring of 217 AD, the self-proclaimed reincarnated Alexander the Great was marching his army near Carrhae. He halted and stepped off the road to urinate, leaving himself completely isolated and vulnerable. As he relieved himself, a soldier named Justin Martialis slipped up behind him and delivered a fatal strike with a sword. The 29-year-old tyrant died in the dirt in the most unglamorous, pathetic manner possible. Caracalla's manufactured myth collapsed in a roadside ditch.